Hi, and welcome to my channel. This is part of a series that I am doing of the Major Arcana. I'm exploring it through poetry. I am a poet and have been reading tarot cards for about 50 years. About the same for both. I started this project during the pandemic of writing poems from the Major Arcana, from actually the whole tarot, but I'm doing the Major Arcana right now. If you haven't seen the earlier two on the Fool and the Magician, you might want to start there. But if not, enjoy today, and I'm happy to see all of you back. With all of these, I start by looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith image of the card because it is so well known and it is iconic. And I wanted to look at that today, although I don't have a poem for it, and just talk about it a little bit. I have to admit that this is a card that I always felt distanced from. She felt very inaccessible to me. I think also because there's appropriation from Judaism, it was a little bit difficult for me to see the Torah on her lap and these two pillars on either side and a cross at the same time that there was a Torah. It's just disturbing. But I think also there's something has to do with my accessing that actual part of myself, that intuitive part that is what the High Priestess is about. And as a poet, I rely on that all the time when I'm writing. And yet somehow this personage seemed so intimidating. I could never quite grasp the card the way I wanted to. So I did a little bit of research into it because I had written all these cards on different, from different decks that have different kinds of imagery. And I said, well, I really need to go back and look at the Rider-Waite-Smith and see what Pamela Coleman Smith was thinking and doing when she put this together. And so these two pillars within which the High Priestess is sitting represent the pillars of Solomon. So I started there and I went online, I looked up the pillars of Solomon, and it turns out that they were not black and white pillars at all. They were made of copper. They were about 4 feet wide and about 27 feet high. Now you know what happens to copper over time. It oxidizes and it becomes a bluish green. So these would not be black and white at all. So that's something that was put on there later by Christians, or by, you know, this idea of wanting to have the balance, the black and white. They do that with, like, you know, on several cards where it's supposed to, you know, indicate balance or something. But these pillars would have been copper pillars. And the tops of these pillars, you can almost see it, not quite at the top, but can you see those parts that look like they could be rose petals? So the very top of the pillars that were outside the temple built by Solomon were roses. And the roses were like 4 or 5 feet wide at the top of these huge pillars, and in the center of them were pomegranates. You can see the pomegranates behind her as well. So the pomegranates have stayed. And the Torah is here as a scroll. It's T-O-R-A and not T-O-R-A-H, so it's not Torah, but it is there. And, you know, part of me is, like I said, a little uncomfortable with the appropriation. But I also feel that there's something so powerful in that first temple that it comes through even in this version that has been changed so much. So the two letters here, B and J, stand for Boaz and Yachin. And Boaz means, I believe, in it is strength, and Yachin means it is established. So this is basically making a statement that this is the place where the tarot is most grounded, where it is established, where it is coming from. It is coming from an intuitive and spiritual place. certainly outside the temple, it had a different meaning, which is, it had to do with the temple itself. Um, the other thing that was really interesting to me about Solomon's temple is that it also had a pool that people would bathe in before they went into the temple. The pool was also made of copper. So again that the color there might have started out as an orangey yellow copper color, but with water in it, it would have changed the color of water to the color of water. It would have turned into that bluish green. And that, in fact, is why worldwide copper is connected with deities and spirits that has something to do with water. So, of course, the cards came to us out of the Mediterranean, out of Italy. So this connection with Kabbalah is definitely there. But the other thing that's also there are the old goddess religions that were throughout the Mediterranean area. And so that color of blue, which she is wearing, was sacred to the goddess Aphrodite, who then in Rome would have been Venus. And even now, if people go to Italy, there are the famous fountains that people throw pennies into and make wishes. They're not throwing the pennies in because it's money. They're throwing the pennies in because they're copper. So you give copper to spirits and goddesses and so forth that are connected with water. Now that pool that would have been in front of Solomon's temple is not here in the picture. But if you look at her knees, you can see that her dress actually becomes a waterfall. So the water is there. And if you look behind the two pillars in between, you can see that behind her there is water. So that aspect of water is always present because, again, that we know that water, that deep, deep ocean of feeling and emotion and intuition and spirit, is what we're talking about when we're talking about the High Priestess. I find it interesting that the cross is not the usual cross that you see with Christianity, that is an uneven cross where the crossbar is higher to the top, but rather is a cross that seems to me to look more like the four directions, the four elements, as it were. So I choose to see it that way. Certainly, if you're a Christian and you want to see it as a Christian cross, that's entirely up to you. An addition, of course, to this would be that she's wearing the triple crown of the full moon and the two crescent moons. So we are again told that this is something that we see by moonlight. This is not something that's out in the bright sunlight. These are truths that are a little bit hidden. So this woman who is sitting there, who has been called everything from the papist, meaning the female pope, to Mary, to the High Priestess, and now so many new names with the new decks and visions that people are having. But those elements are almost always there. And you can see again down at the bottom, you can see the moon, and it's the barest crescent of the moon, barely any light at all. So this is about mystery. This is about that deep mysterious. And I want to point out also that another a thing that you can see right above the moon is the Jewish symbol for Chai, which means life. So it's talking about life, but here especially about spiritual life. It was really a great journey for me to have to go back and look into this card in some depth in order to be able to present this to you, because I just felt that, okay, you've done all these poems about these other visions of the High Priestess, but you need to think about that initial vision that Pamela Coleman Smith had, along with her Waite. We don't know who came up with what part of it. And I was actually really thankful in a weird sort of way that I was able to see her in a very different way and see it not just as appropriation, but as very and accurate representations of the indwelling God, not the God that's up there in the sky, all those images. But in Judaism, God has many, 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 many names, and that whole idea of the Lord and a Father God up there is not at all what's at the heart of it. It's a presence, it's a spirit, it's beyond human understanding. We can't even say the name of God. That's why there are thousands of names of God, because it's beyond human understanding. So I love that mysteriousness, that sacred mystery that is at the bottom, it is being shown here as being foundational to what the tarot is about. So you start off as the Fool, you get some of your tools, and then you have to take this next step in your journey, which is an intuitive one, a spiritual one. You have to go to that place first. And I thought that was really interesting also, that you go to intuition and mystery first before you go to the physical, before you go to the mental. So I want to look at this card, and it's closest really to the Rider-Waite Smith in a way. She's clearly somebody of who has rank. She is the High Priestess. She is still wearing the blue dress, and the sea is still behind her. The pillars are not there though, and she now has a book rather than the scroll. She has a much more complicated cross, and I think I should know what that is. It looks almost like it's a cross with an ankh, but I'm not completely sure. I would have to go back and read about that, and I apologize for not having done that ahead of time. If you know, please let me know. The colors here are interesting, and that there's lots of greens in that red behind her as well. And then she's got the bird, the peacock in front of her as kind of familiar. So I want to read the poem that goes along with this. It's called Under the Crescent Moon. Eyes half lowered, she gazes into the distance, her book open on her lap. The peacock at her feet crooks his neck as if to strike at something just beyond his trailing tail. Her crown is uncomfortable. She will take it off, shed her purple cloak, heavy with silver, her light blue gown, walk through the trees under the crescent moon, bathe naked in the endless sea. So my impulse as a poet was to allow her to get out of all these trappings. Walk through the trees, down to the sea, and that is where it's all happening. That is the unconscious. That is the place. And we are naked there. We are not all dressed up fancy like this. So that was a little bit of the journey that I took there. You'll notice that the crescent moon in the sky is also still a small crescent. It's a little bit bigger than the one on the RWS that I just showed you. But it's still a very small slice of moon. There's not a lot of light here. So it's very safe for her also to go bathing naked. She doesn't have to worry about privacy or whatever. It is that kind of a night where it's not a full moon. She can go bathing naked in the ocean, the deep ocean of consciousness. And I guess that says something to us too, is that in order, or I guess I want to put it as a question, in order to bathe in the sea of that deep sea of consciousness, do we have to get naked in some way? Do we have to become vulnerable in that way? And isn't this the place where we can do that? Because it is a place of darkness. This is the very slimmest of moonlight. Um, so I was able to connect a little bit more with her, partly because as a poet, I was able to take her on her own journey, which was, wow, I don't want to be sitting here holding this book, wearing this heavy crown, wearing this robe. Look, there, the sea is out there. The moon is, calling me, and let her be who she is in her deepest essence. And so that's where I went with that poem. So this next card is from the Fey Tarot. And it follows from me from the other one, because now there she is dressed again, but down by the water. She's come down from the chair and is leaning instead against a tree. And you see that she's connected to the moon. She's holding the crescent moon, but the moon is there in all its phases. So she is very, very connected up with that. I call this poem Her Face. She leans against the gnarled tree in her dark blue robes, holds the new moon in her arms, watches the other crescents grow in the sky. The tree's dark branches are outlined by the moon's full face, a reflection of her own. So in this one, I was really just looking at that connection between the High Priestess and the moon, and kind of following that, that she, can be seen as almost the moon itself, that you see things that you don't see in sunlight sometimes, but the shadows can be darker. It's harder to see. You have to work at it a little bit. But I find her very relaxed here in comparison to the other two. And I like to think of it as well. She's had her swim now. She's dressed up. She's dressed in the deep blue of water, which is the right color somehow. And she can contemplate not just the moon that is there in the night, because she is a goddess. She is the High Priestess. She can see all the moons at once and hold them in her lap. And in fact, they are a reflection of her face. So that is that particular poem from the Anna Kay. And I have to say that I did find this High Priestess more accessible, I think partly just because of the sort of relaxed pose that she's in, rather than a more strict, almost like the Hierophant, because she was the papist at one point, in a very squared off kind of card. In this one, she's just lying back, and the unconscious feels more like that to me. It does not feel as if it's stiff and stern and hierarchical and, all those things that you would think about in terms of royalty and so forth. So I did enjoy this card very much for that. So this next card is just so much fun. When I saw this card, it just made me smile. I just really love. Well, I love cats, but to see this High Priestess cat really delighted me. And then I started looking at it in more detail and realizing that this poor cat has been dressed up by someone. I hate when people dress up their animals. But this cat is there. The crescent moon is there. The stars. Look at the look on her face. She's like putting up with this. And it made me think about cats. and the fact that that the cats in Egypt were sacred to the goddess Bastet, who was herself a cat. And so that is what I wrote this poem about, who she is. She remembers that every cat is descended from a goddess. No matter that someone's put this rumpled witchy hat with its cheap shiny buckle on her head, hung a star on her collar. A blue crescent moon dangles from the ceiling. On the floor, a corked flask, 2 candles burning low, wax puddling. She remembers who she is. You can see it in her green eyes, her silver gray face, in the double ruffs of thick fur circling her throat, her long tail, her legs, one charcoal, one white. And of course, the charcoal and white are echoing the two pillars that are on the Rider-Waite-Smith, the black and the white. And she is neither black nor white in this cat, you know, and although her face is gray. I love that she has green eyes. But that look of patience, I have seen cats have that look, like, what are you humans doing? And just getting that look of sort of strained patience in their faces, and I appreciate it so much. But how does the card, you know, sort of work for me? And part of how it works is it doesn't matter how we're dressed. It doesn't matter what kinds of cultural things are put on us, language, ideas, stereotypes, whatever it is, because we are all descended from this place. I have here, she remembers that all cats are descended from a goddess. And I would say all humans are descended, come from that divine place. So all we have to do is remember it. No matter what's going on around us, we can be at the cheapest, creepiest party. You know, we can be clothed in fancy ways. We can be clothed in the poorest of clothing. No matter where we are, no matter what, how do we remember who we really are? How do we remember? That's the question, because it can be so hard to remember that you are, in your deepest core, sacred, that you came from a divine place, and that divinity is still in you. So I love this cat. And I have to say, when I bought the cat tarot, I bought it because I thought it was a cute cat tarot, and I like cats. I don't have a lot of cat tarots, but this one caught my eye. And the amazing thing about it was that I started getting these really, really good readings. I mean, right on readings. And so I've enjoyed kind of going deeper into some of the cards. And this just looks like, oh, somebody dressed their cat up for a Halloween party or whatever. But it's more than that. It's that in spite of all that, she remembers who she is. And isn't that the situation we are all in? We have all been dressed in ideas, clothing, cultures, whatever, expectations, gender expectations, all kinds of things. It doesn't matter. There is a way for us to remember who we are. And this cat is a reminder of that for me. So I want to thank Megan Lincott for this fabulous image of the cat. This card is from a deck that I thought I was never going to buy. It was on my list of, that looks really interesting, but a little too weird, and I probably will never get it. And then finally I got it. And there's all kinds of fairy tarots out there, but the Fey Tarot, the fairies in them are a little bit different, and some of them, she is very normal looking, but some of them are very kind of scary looking. So I didn't use this tarot very often for a long time. And then, I don't know, I was away from the tarot for a couple of years, and I came back and it just drew me. And I started using it. And again, it was one of those decks that started giving me these crystal clear readings. So this, you can see in this tarot, they've renamed the High Priestess as the Seer. And it's quite different. She is sitting there. She has a book, but she's actively reading the book. I love that she's like dressed herself in these wonderful colors, like the band on her hair and her the collar with the stone in it, and the long earrings. And behind her there's a door, and the door has an hourglass on it. So it seems to me that it's the door into time. So she is in this timeless space, and it's not clear. She has wings. Is she in the clouds? Is she near the ocean? It's not quite clear to me, at least. If you can see more clearly than I, please let me know. And so I wrote this poem about it, and I would like to share that with you. The Seer. She is sitting on the stone steps that lead to the door of time, reading the infinite book, the one with the blue binding. She has turned her back on the gray world of stone and dragons, wrapped her head in bright cloth, put on her earrings and the purple collar with the blue oval gem. She should be making appearances somewhere, but she has to find that one thing she remembers. Her finger lands on a word, right here. They want her to go through that door. She comes and goes as she pleases. So I think I was partly thinking of the High Priestess here as a rock star. A rock star that, like magicians and, certain people feel that they can just call on. I want you to appear now. Come through the door. It's your turn to do this. And she's turned her back on them because there's something she remembers, and she can put her finger right on it. It's right there, that thing she wants to remember in this book. And for me, it is the Infinite Book. If you see, it has a Lemnis Scott on the cover. So it is the Book of Infinity. That is what she was reading. And I kind of liked that transformation from the Torah. There's also this sort of taking it away from the medieval and keeping it there at the same time. Like she's not going to, she's not dealing with the court. She's not dealing with those things. She's not dealing with the dragons. Who are those people who are always wanting us to make an appearance? And she's like, she comes and goes as she pleases. And that is the truth about intuition. You can stand there, arms wide open. You can implore, you can do whatever, but she comes and goes when she wants. Any of us who are artists know that. Any of us who are readers know that. We hope that we're doing whatever the right thing is, that our intuition will come. But sometimes it doesn't. And it certainly is not going to do our bidding. And if we get all uptight about it, or we think if we do like this particular thing in this particular order every time, our intuition is going to show up. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't until we just relax. But the truth is that intuition is a gift. And we don't own the power. The power comes through us. I know so many writers and poets and artists as well. And everybody talks about those poems, those stories, those images that just come from, we don't know where. We feel like we're a conduit. And I know there's all kinds of psychological explanations for that, which doesn't really matter to me what the science is behind it. if it comes from some deeper part of ourselves that we have to relax into, or we've somehow been putting all these ideas together, unconsciously, and suddenly they all gel, or whether we are a conduit for something that's outside ourselves or something deep, deep in ourselves. It doesn't matter to me what the reality behind it is. The thing is that we don't own it. We can't control it. We can't say, now you walk through the door. It's your turn. You have to go on stage now. You have to perform. Won't be there. Won't be there. So I really, I love this image for reminding me that all I can do is, stand with my heart and my arms open, um, and I will be visited. I will, the idea, the inspiration, the intuition will come to me. So I guess I'm not a big one with the word faith, but I guess there is some faith there, that that is, either in our deepest self, or however, again, we want to explain that. The important thing, it seems to me, is that we don't own her. That dragon and whoever else that is over there, I don't know if it's another dragon's tail I'm seeing, they don't own her. They don't get her to, they don't get to tell her when to come and go. She comes and goes as she pleases. And I think that's an important thing to appreciate about intuition, and I think that's why sometimes it's very resistant to being studied scientifically, because how you do an experiment if she comes and goes when she pleases? So it might be just something that's outside the realm of science, and we'll never have that particular answer to that. And that's okay, because I know sometimes a poem will come and I have no idea. I have no idea. It just comes. I don't have to change a word. And I want to say that while still emphasizing that most of us who are artists and writers spend most of our time doing the hard work of digging, mining, heavy lifting. We're not like in a state of inspiration all the time. Matter of fact, I call it a state of grace. I have that from my childhood. That phrase used to be used, and I think of that as what happens with artists when you're visited, when that intuition comes, when you just, it flows. You're a musician, and the solo just comes out of you. You're a visual artist, and you paint something you had no idea was going to come out. You write the poem that you never knew was there and that needed to be written. It's a gift. And as long as we remember that and don't think we own it, it will continue to visit. So that's what I take from this one. The next card that we're going to look at is from the Gentle Tarot. The Gentle Tarot doesn't claim to be a nature tarot at all, and yet this is an owl that is shown in its natural element, and it is the High Priestess. Once again, we're seeing the crescent moon, the very barest light. I love that there's kind of a nimbus around the moon that's dark, dark purple. That a little bit of that orange light is like reflected in almost like a rainbow river behind the owl, which reminds me that the owl can see things that we cannot see with our limited human sight. This is a great horned owl, so it looks like it has ears. And of course, owl ears are hidden under their feathers. Those are not the ears themselves. It is a formidable owl. It's a very recognizable owl. And it's got those front-facing eyes that look like they know so much. But there's nothing fancy about this owl. This owl sitting on a branch of a tree that we can't even really see. It is nighttime. This is a silent predator and is in our trees all day long. We very rarely hear it. We very rarely see it. And here's the poem. It's called Just the Barest. Just the barest crescent moon, pale orange. What can't be seen is so much more vast than what our eyes take in. The flashes of white in your feathers, so much more brilliant than moonlight. Your round eyes, the great feathered horns. Silent all day. Then it comes, your voice out of darkness. So I wanted to think about this in terms of the High Priestess and what it means. The silence, the fact that we cannot see as clearly as we might, and yet we get these flashes. Her feathers are the brightest thing in this picture, brighter than the moonlight. So there's something special here. Notice that this has very little to do with the Rider-Waite-Smith, other than the crescent moon. You're not seeing the pillars. You're not seeing many of the things. The water is there in a kind of a way. If you think about the great sort of sea of space, that is certainly there. But also this sort of rainbow river that goes through it makes me think a lot of that that consciousness that we can dip into, and that is the place from which she speaks. The complete silence of this voice during the daytime and during most of the nighttime, that makes it such a surprise when it comes. All of a sudden, she speaks. We hear that voice. And that seems to me to be very, very indicative of the way intuition works, what our relationship is with this mysterious figure of the High Priestess. She is there. She is always there. I have the line in the poem that what can't be seen is so much more vast than what our eyes take in. So this is me as a poet trying to get to that essence of the High Priestess. Because look at those great big eyes, and they can see. She can see what we can't see. But there's so much out there in the dark. I mean, physicists talk about dark matter now as being like taking up, like 80% of, I'm making up this number, but some vast amount of the universe, matter that we can't even see. So, so in a very real way, even through the sciences, what we can't see is so much greater than what we can see. And certainly in a spiritual way, what we can't see is so much bigger. And that's why we need access to the High Priestess. It's why she's a little scary. Owls can be a little scary, and the great horned owl can be more than a little scary. If you're, at night particularly, but it could happen even in the daytime, all this in the middle of silence. You're in the woods, there's a crescent moon, totally silent, and then it comes, her voice out of darkness. And that's what it is, because it's out of the darkness of all that we don't know that the voice of the High Priestess speaks. If I got this in a reading, I would be like, okay, you need to pay attention because there could be information coming to you. You need to listen. She's telling you with the brightness of her feathers that she is there, but I would feel it was trustworthy. This feels like a trustworthy card to me. But notice there's no Christian symbol there, there's no Torah, there's no book. This is just an owl in a tree. And she can see things we can't see. And every once in a while, if we're lucky, we hear her speak. How perfect for an image of the High Priestess. So this is again a very different image, and we see the wise woman here. They've changed the name, and I actually really like that, and it seems appropriate for the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. This is the one that, if you remember, had the white heart as the Fool, and so I feel very comfortable with this image of the wise woman. I like this deck also because of the diversity. We're seeing a woman who has some weight here, who has some girth, and she's an older woman with long white, grayish white hair, and she's sitting under a tree. The pillars are not there except as shadows, a light and a dark shadow, and there's not a book on her lap, but there is something spread on the ground that she is able to read. So I just loved this. And one of the things that it made me think about is where I come from. And so the first line of this poem comes from that. The poem is actually called Where I Come From. Where I come from, all the old women are round. Here's one sitting beneath the black walnut tree, purple dress, blue cloak and apron, white hair long and loose. She's been here a long time. Her eyes are closed. Her hands move gently over acorns, pebbles, roots, and leaves she's gathered on the cloth she spread on the forest floor. She knows which ones you need. So this wise woman is also, again, it's the High Priestess. She's about intuition, but she's also, I think, a little closer to perhaps a Wiccan High Priestess, and that there's some very practical things she's doing. She is not working from within a Western Abrahamic tradition, Judeo-Christian, Muslim, with the book. She's working with the book that is the world itself. So she's got things spread out there on the ground. She's able to perhaps read them, read what they mean, and she knows what it is you need. So I enjoyed this so much. It was a very refreshing image for me. And as I told you earlier, when I first started my sort of journey into understanding the High Priestess better, I was a little bit put off. I had been put off by the very stiffness of her, and the sort of the fact that she was the mirror image in some ways of the Hierophant, who is so Christianized and so much the Pope. So again, to see the ease of her movements, the largeness of her body, which feels also very generous, and the long gray hair. This is not a young, priestess, all, perfectly Hollywood. This is an old woman. She's been around a long time, maybe as long as that tree, maybe even longer. And just the tree there as the sort of the tree of life symbol, as opposed to the two pillars. I like that a lot. I don't see pomegranates, but there's all kinds of fruit in that tree. So that whole thing about being tied into life is very, very much present. So I just wanted to introduce you to this card, and I hope you like it as much as I do. This last card that I've written about is from the Wild Unknown Tarot. This is another one of those decks that I avoided for years, partly because I love color so much and so much of it is in black and white, and partly because I just wasn't sure if those images were going to really speak to me. And finally I got it and I sat down with it, and this is one of the first cards in the deck. Of course, I looked at the Fool and I looked at the Magician, and then I came to this card. There is something so grounded about this High Priestess. She is a tiger, and she's not just any kind of tiger. She is a Siberian tiger. She's black and white under the crescent moon in the darkest dark of night, and you know that in Siberia it has those long winter nights that go on for a long time. So I was thinking to myself, now how is the tiger the High Priestess? So I decided to do some research on tigers. And they are the largest of the large cats. They're bigger than lions. They can be up to 950 pounds. They're huge. So this is a large lady. And their roars can be heard for 2 miles, which is not quite as far as a lion's. A lion's can be heard up to 5 miles. But what's interesting and special about the tiger's roar is that it's full of subsonics. So you can actually feel it in your bones. And mammals or other prey that might be nearby can actually be paralyzed by the subsonics in the tiger's roar. And there's something about that that immediately spoke to me. Because when we feel intuition, what do we say? I feel it in my gut. I feel it in my bones. And I thought, oh, okay, I get it. And I feel like this is really the card that opened it all up for me. And then I had to go back and do my research into the Rider-Waite-Smith because now all of a sudden I had this High Priestess that I understood. But let me read you the poem first, and then we'll talk a little more about it. And it's just called High Priestess. I always knew you were there. I pictured you tall, thin, in a dark burgundy dress, silk maybe, or velvet. I could feel you sometimes deep in my bones, like the subsonic roar of a giant cat miles away. So it shouldn't have surprised me when you showed yourself, all white and black fur, almost invisible against the tundra, silent and alone. Tiger, tiger, burning bright. You are all secrets, mysteriousness itself. You live in me. I have only to turn inward and listen for the thrumming of your voice. So this is the first time the High Priestess was so accessible to me that I could actually feel her inside me. I could feel, oh yes, not that I had never had, felt intuition. I've been a poet for 50 years. I have, I feel like I'm open to that. But recognizing, oh yeah, when you get those feelings in your bones, you get those feelings in your gut, that's your intuition. That's the voice. And so this image of the tiger, for me, totally opened up the whole meaning of the High Priestess card. I was delighted to be able to quote from Robert Blake's poem Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, which goes on in the forest of the night. And if you haven't read that, I want to suggest it to you because it is an amazing poem. And that's why, if you look at my poem, you'll see that it's spelled Tyger, because that is how he spelled it in his poem. But it was a favorite poem of mine, especially when I was younger. And it's so delightful to be able to then quote a poet that you love in a poem. In my investigation of the Siberian tiger, I realized that I had always thought that they were simply black and white tigers, but they are not. They are orange tigers. But on the card, she is black and white. And so that actually made me love it even more, because now, like the white hart, this is a spirit animal. This is an unusual tiger. Even beyond being a Siberian tiger, she is a tiger that comes from the spirit. And so I loved it even more, realizing that my initial thoughts about Siberian tigers were actually incorrect. So sometimes, wow, it is worth it to do your homework. I love this. I love this card. I love this black and white tiger. I feel that she lives with me now. So just wanted to say, if you haven't gotten to this stage with your cards where you are questioning and you are looking things up and making connections and letting your mind do that kind of associative work that we do as poets and that we do as readers, absolutely do it, because sometimes you get these great surprises.